Well, hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. It's hard to believe it's already Wednesday. My days are running together in quarantine. I'm Holly Tate. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Vanderbloemen, and we are just so thrilled that you're taking time to be with us today as we have a lineup of executive pastors from all over the country, from all different sizes and shapes and denominations and locations of the kingdom. And so we're excited to learn from them today. Make sure as you're watching today, we want to hear your questions. We're going to leave time for Q&A right before the top of the hour. So if you'll make sure you put those questions in your comments. We love seeing you guys help each other and respond to each other and build community as our panels are going. So we can't wait to hear from you. But I'll go ahead and hand it over to Sutton Turner, our Chief Operating Officer at Vanderbloemen, who's going to moderate today's panel.
Well, thanks, Holly. This is really exciting for me, being a former executive pastor, to be able to talk to other executives and from all over the country. And so, Holly, as you and I both know, we put together this panel with a couple of things in mind. One, to have people from diverse sizes of churches and diverse locations of churches. Those two things, because to me, they make a large difference on what a church is facing during this time period as far as reopening. And so everything that we're talking about today is, what is that reopening and what does that look like, and having a real discussion. So I've asked our panelists to unmute themselves and interrupt each other, and let's try to help each other and then answer as many questions as we possibly can. And so what I want to do is have each one of them introduce themselves, what their name and their title is, and the church and their location, and specifically when talking about their location, what they're facing in their state, because each one of them represents a different state, and there's a different, because the different governors are giving different directions. And so what does it look like for them for the next 30, 60 days? And so we're going to start with Lonnie Wilbanks. She's at the Foundry Church in Washington, D.C. Our church is about 500 in size. And so, Lonnie, welcome, and thank you for being a part of what we're doing today.
Thanks, Sutton. This is great. And I just want to say thank you to the whole Vanderbloemen team, because you guys have been a tremendous resource for a lot of us out here. So thank you for putting this together.
Well, thank you.
Yes. As Sutton said, I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm in Washington, D.C. We don't have a governor. We have a mayor. So our situation right now as it stands is lockdown, stay-at-home orders. And so our staff has not been in the building since middle of March. We did try and do a couple of on-site worship services the last 2 Sundays in March, but starting April, we went all online. So our crew and our congregation is watching each of our clergy members and our leading worship from their homes. So that's been really, really interesting, to say the least, but it's also been very fulfilling. So the rest of in terms of the rest of the conference, so we're a United Methodist conference church. And so in our conference, we're part of the Baltimore, Washington conference, which encompasses 3 states. So you've got parts of Maryland, parts of Virginia, and then all of Washington, most of Washington, D.C., rather. I'm sorry. Yes, let me get that right, because someone will correct me later. So we have to, our bishop really gives us that direction. And so she has basically said that we have more on stay at home, and we do virtual worship. But as far as the timeline goes, that's like a crystal ball, looking into it and trying to find that answer. And right now we have made it known to our congregation that we won't be going back into the building. We've kind of done it in like stages. So first it was, middle of May, then we pushed that out to middle of June. And now it's looking like it could be indefinitely, and that when we do come back, it'll be in different phases and stages based on what the government is saying. And really where we're taking our primary guidance from is the science behind it, right? So right. We're following World Health and CDC.
So Lonnie, are you thinking, sometime in July, that, because I mean your church is 500 in size, so that when when we have guidelines that will come out, most likely it will be limited on a number of people that can gather. So your size kind of gives you an advantage on possibly coming back sooner than some, like Tammy has a very large church in Oklahoma. But from a geographic standpoint, you're probably July would be the first time that you think that you would be coming back?
Really, that if I were to say that, then I would know for sure.
Right.
So I think at this point, our congregation has quadrupled in size in this new online environment, like I think a lot of us have seen. So I think our congregation would be ready to come in when it's completely safe. So when that happens is when that, when we'll go back. I don't know if it's July or if it's August or if we have a repeat in the fall.
So it's fair to say that you don't think that you'll be coming back in May and June?
Oh, for certain. May.
Okay.
At least, yeah.
Okay. And so let's go to Matt, Pastor Matt, who is with South Bend City Church. He's in South Bend, Indiana. So Pastor Matt, how are you today?
Good, doing well. We're in South Bend, a little rainy here, but yeah.
Okay, so give us Indiana. You're running 500. So what are you hearing? What are you planning? What does May and June look like for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sutton. Right now our stay-at-home orders until May 1st, although there's a lot of questions around if that'll be extended or not, because some of the things we're hearing is that we might not peak with this pandemic for like another 2 weeks. So there's probably a lot more questions that we have right now than answers. I think the thing that we're thinking through a lot of scenarios, one, like, okay, when some of those restrictions are lifted, then what does it look like? What are some questions we need to be asking? But then also the scenario of like, could we start meeting again? And then would there be a possibility of us having to actually go back to online if things resurface? So just thinking through a lot of those scenarios, I think one of the things that we're holding on to is like, we get to choose the length of the runway in some settings here. My father-in-law has a small plane, and the size of the runway determines like the approach. And so I think for us, like our approach is like, hey, let's not rush into this as a church. In many ways, the church is still thriving, even though we're not meeting in person. And so I think for us, what that would look like would be our table groups, our small groups, probably meeting more in person to start and doing some things in terms of the community, in terms of serving and care before we jump into meeting in person in our gatherings.
So when you're thinking ahead, what does May and June look like for you?
Yeah, May and June is really difficult to imagine us meeting in person.
Okay, so
right
very
now.
Similar to Lonnie.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
Okay.
I think there's like the actual risk, but there's also the perceived risk, right? Of like what we're hearing from like people in our community, and so I want to be really wise with that.
Right. Okay, so Pastor David Van Pelt, administrative pastor, New Hope, out in Chula Vista,
yes,
California.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone from Washington D.C., then we've gone to Indiana. Now we're all the way over on the West Coast. So tell us what life's like. Your church is running 700 somewhere in that neighborhood. So we've gone from 400, a little bit larger. Now we're at 700. So give us the surrounding of what's surrounding your church.
Yes, we are very far west and pretty far south. So for those that don't know, Chula Vista is in the southern part of San Diego County. We're pretty close to the U.S.-Mexico border. Just to give you a kind of a geographical overview of where Chula Vista is. We are running about 700. California, I'm sure like other states, is pretty, we're pretty conservative. I think our governor is kind of taking a 4-stage approach, probably also similar to some other states as far as staging. We're currently in stage 1. And so kind of in our county, they just started reopening beaches, but you have to keep moving. You can't lay out on the sand or anything. Surfing's okay, kayaking okay, and the ocean swimming's okay. We're from yesterday, from what Governor Gavin Newsom said, we're looking to move into stage 2 in the next couple of weeks. No date really determined. Stage 2 would put some retail shops open, but curbside pickup only. I think also some childcare centers with a lot of things in place, which could impact churches as well. We do run a preschool at our church, and so we're kind of looking closely into that. We've decided to close it for the rest of the given school year. We run in a year-round schedule, so we would start back up in July anyway, as far as the preschool at the church.
That's your preschool? You're talking about
Correct.
your preschool?
Yeah,
Okay.
preschool. And then stage 3 would include in-person religious services. So worship venues, weddings, funerals, etc. And so what he said yesterday is that we're months, not weeks away from that. So we're probably looking more towards, that June timeline to at least start to entertain having in-person services. There's not been like limit on number of people or anything yet that he's spoken of. Yeah, so that's kind of where we're at.
So you think May is out as far as meeting, but maybe sometime in June?
Yeah.
Okay.
Optimistically, yes.
Optimistically. Now, are you also having online worship and doing online community groups?
We are, yeah.
Okay.
Right now we're doing recording. We haven't taken the live part of it yet, but we're recording and then just broadcasting via YouTube. It's really been different from us. We've always had an audio platform, so we've always recorded, but this is the first time we've ever really delved into videoing. So it's been a great experience. Similar to other churches too, we're just excited to be able to reach more people that way. And so that's kind of the silver lining in it all. So yeah, that's where we're at.
That's great. Well, now we're going to go back to the middle part of the country in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with Tammy McQuarters. And Tammy is the COO of Transformation Church. And welcome, Tammy. I appreciate you participating today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sutton.
All right. So tell us about what's going on in Oklahoma. And then we're going to slide down after we talk to you, and we're going to talk about Texas. So what's going on in Oklahoma? What are you hearing? And what are you planning for May and June?
Much like some of the other states, we are following the federal and state mandate. Our mayor, I think, would have preferred to hold off a little bit longer, but we will be released from the Safer at Home effective May 1st, so on tomorrow or a couple of days. Yep. We'll be released from that. The idea for worship centers is that if you can maintain social distancing guidelines and everything, that you would be able to resume worship. Certainly because of our size, that will not be anything that we'll be able to participate in. Safety.
All right, so for everybody listening, you're about 3,000, 3,500?
Yes.
Okay, so about 30. So that gives everybody a kind of an idea on the size of your church. It's great.
Yeah, we have an arena that will seat 4,200, but even at that, we would not be able to maintain, the required guidelines. And of course, safety is at the forefront. Not to mention our children's areas would house about, we probably have from 450 to 500 children on a weekend, and there's definitely no room or opportunity for social distancing there. So with that being said, it remains a question as to when we will be able to return. Right now, we've been in an online experience since, I believe, the last week of March anyway. Pastor Michael is still speaking live on Sunday mornings, but our worship has been pre-recorded. We've been able to record a few weeks out. So the worship is not live, but he still comes and he does the message just with a small team on Sundays. Everybody's masked up. We are following, the guidelines, and we have a really large, had a large online viewing presence as well prior to coming into this. And we have only seen that grow. I mean, I think the last couple of weeks, we have had over 50,000 devices reported in our analytics for the Sunday morning. So still a live experience from him, but And yeah, we're just seeing astronomical growth. I also believe that we will grow past the 3,500 even that we're seeing, just because we've had more opportunity for people to be exposed, to us, people that would not have seen us before, maybe never come to the building. We even had the opportunity on Easter morning to be broadcast on a local network. And so the growth that we could experience, I'm just not sure when it's going to be possible, for us to do it.
Okay, so you're in a situation that's a little bit different than everybody else's. You're in a situation where your state is going to be opening up, but your size is going to be one of your things that's holding you back. I mean, if you were, let's just say 150 on a weekend, you might be able to have a couple of services and maybe spread it out. But because your size is so large and your children, children's ministry would be insane, that's kind of the thing that's holding you back.
Yeah, additionally, we have lots of first-time visitors every week and out-of-state visitors. And so that would be one of the concerns even that we would have with opening, is as other states are opening and people feel free to travel, it's nothing for us to have 50 to 100 out-of-state visitors on a Sunday morning. And so that's the other thing, as people are, given that freedom or their restrictions are moved, then we would face adding that number to us as well. And we have a line on Sunday mornings to get into the sanctuary, and there's just not enough space, to accommodate 6 foot.
So when you're looking at May and June, do you see any gathering in the month of May at all?
Not at all.
Okay.
We have even our staff is still out of the office. I think at the earliest we could consider May phasing some of the staff, and even now as needed, like we're hosting what we call a prayer pandemic, and we're doing noon prayer on social media every day. And so the small staff and the couple people that are praying, they're in the building every day, from noon. And so as needed, our facilities people are here as well doing work. But I don't foresee a full staff even back in the office, potentially June. Again, still just a big question mark. The way the city and state are looking at it right now is, as with each phase, they're looking for 14 days of incidents, to go down, for the numbers to go down. And with that, they will consider moving to the next stage. But if large gatherings are still prohibited, which right now it's still no more than 10, or you'd be able to accommodate the social distancing, we could be at the very end of that spectrum. And our goal is not to contribute, to this at all. We want to remain safe. And if that means that we have to stay out of the building, we're just so thankful to have already had an online capability, because there was a time a few years ago that we didn't even have that capability, but that is greatly assisting. We've ramped up our groups, and we're doing online, we have online groups now, and that's helping myself. I'm even hosting a group, and literally over 100 people from all over the world have signed up for this group. Awesome. And so, yeah, it's a good problem to have, but it certainly comes with its challenges.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Brad Fleury, he's from Texas. Katy, Texas, at Kingsland Baptist Church. And Brad, I just thank you for joining today. And Brad's church is about 4,000. Is that correct, Brad? Right around that? Okay, so talk us through, you're in Texas, kind of similar to Tammy's situation in Oklahoma, as far as the government institution is kind of wanting to get things back to work, which is different from everybody else. But you're in a situation where you've got a large congregation. So walk us through kind of what you're seeing.
From a Texas perspective, really quick, is from the beginning is churches, the governor deemed them essential. So in theory, any church could have stayed open. Now, I don't know of any personally that did. They were making wise decisions to protect their communities. But but that's part of it. So then from Governor Abbott's perspective, the governor of Texas, he's based upon the data is moving to open Texas back up, and a lot of that starts May 1st. And so he's taking instead of a numbers, cap of 10, 50, he's doing a percentage. Those percentages are not restrictive to churches. But
Okay.
we've made the decision that we're going to mirror what the government is doing, just from a safety perspective. And so we've got a phased approach that we're starting actually in a couple of weeks. A difficulty here as well is Katy, Texas is right outside of Houston. It's a city of about 300,000, but the city of Katy is in 3 counties. So my congregation have 3 different county judges, and there's different rules and regulations based upon each county. So if you don't want to wear a mask, you can drive a mile down the road to the other grocery store and you don't have to wear one. I mean, so it's just a little unique and different.
Okay, let me ask you a question while you say that. So you're 4,000, but you're multi-site?
We have 2 campuses.
Okay, so tell us about each size there, because that will help people also to understand what your challenge is.
Correct. So our North Katy campus, it runs about 300, and we're in the middle of a building project. So we were in a school. Well, in Katy, or probably like a lot of schools in Texas, is they've closed the doors to any outside rentals. So thankfully, our construction project is still moving along. But we're going to be we've got the space where we can take that multi-site campus, house them here in the meantime until we open that campus up in August or early September.
Okay.
So for us, Sutton, is what we're doing starting next week is we've sort of got a 5-step plan. Step 1, in essence, is we start bringing back staff over a 2-week period. So that's step 1. Step 2 for us is May 17th. Is we're starting some limited, what we call community groups, Sunday schools, whatever you call them, but those are going to be meeting during the week. And so for us, really, Sutton, is what we want to do is typically what every church does on a Sunday pre-virus is you just provide an opportunity. And then people, through their wisdom and their discernment, they may choose not to come to your church on a Sunday before coronavirus because they wanted to go to a kid's soccer game or something. I mean, so we're just going to provide those opportunities, and we're going to maintain, strict guidance based upon social distance and everything else. So step 2 for us will be our community group gatherings spread throughout the building. It'll be deconflicted with entry points and exit points and designated bathrooms. Step 3 for us is really
any size limitation on that community group gathering size?
The size is dictated by the venue. And so the group, they're all different sizes. And so, but we won't be a numerical restriction because we'll put a larger group in a larger venue where they can still maintain all requirements. Some groups may choose not to do it. Some groups may choose, dad's going to stay home with the kids and moms are going to have a night out at the church. So there's just, once again, an opportunity for them to do that in a safe environment. Our next step will be May 24th. We're going to do an outside service. Now, we did a drive-in service for Easter that was very, very well received, probably greater than we thought it would be. But this now is we required everyone to stay indoors. We didn't even broadcast anything sound. You could only tune in your car. So this one.
Okay, wait. So help us understand that, because so people came to your parking lot. They were in cars. How did they hear the service? Through their phone?
There's live. There's large screen TVs, and then there's an FM station.
Okay.
So they just turned into 97.5, and they saw it in front of them. So we had a number of different screens on our campus they could pull up and watch. And then the 24th, we're going to have the opportunity for sort of ooching into this and outdoor worship. And so families can come, if you want to stay in your car, there'll be a designated space for you to do that. If you want to, be able to get picnic blankets and chairs and stay within a family unit and maintain social distance, because at this point, by the 24th is we're over 3 weeks into Texas being opened up. So right now, Texas is opened up at 25%. And then by the 14th, when the governor reevaluates, you have the opportunity to be at 50%. And then at the end of the month, they'll continue to make decisions based upon numbers. And then
Now, those are the occupancy standards of the room. Is that what you're talking about by
Correct.
the 25, 50%? Okay.
Yep. And
Okay.
so then the end of the month, May 31st, is then we will do worship in our building. No age group programming, no childcare, no kids ministry. For us, it just so happens that our facility, what typically frustrated us is Kingsland has, like a lot of churches, had good, healthy growth over time, not like a real massive, but there was never a master plan. So we have a lot of medium-sized venues that we just
Right.
continued to build over 40 years.
Right.
So typically what frustrated us before this is now provide
Yeah, it's
a
helping you. Yeah.
unique opportunity for us to have worship venues throughout our campus. And so we'll start that on May 31st. And then that's sort of step 4. And then step 5, which is return to some sort of age group programming, will probably happen in July. So.
Okay, so let's back up to that. What is it, the 24th, where you're going to open up your campus, but you're not going to have any childcare?
It's going to be
you're
out,
just-
24th is outside.
Okay, outside. So the 31st.
31st.
So in the 31st, that's a long time away, but
Right.
it'll come here fast. Are you thinking on a pre-record and then it's going to be piped through different, or are you going to do, like a video venue type of environment, or how are you going to do it?
So what we will do is we've got 3 large venues. And so on a typical Sunday, those venues have live preaching, live worship. So for 3 of our venues, you will have live worship. 2 of our venues, you'll have live worship, live preaching. 1 will be live worship and then video. And then 2 of our sort of, that fits 150 will be just live stream. They'll have a live presence in the room from a shepherding perspective, but they'll be watching it.
Okay.
So
Man, that's
for
awesome.
us is each one of those venues has a designated entry and exit point, that people will sign up for via Eventbrite. And, Sutton, if you sign up for it, you get a video from us showing you where to come in. It's color coordinated. We'll have pipe and drape and other ways. So you come in and out one door. Each of those have their own restrooms. And so in theory, you'll never have the bleed over of, the capacity that you would have. And then we'll have a separate area for those that may just be a drop-in visitor that didn't register. So we've built in that surplus as well within each of those.
That's awesome. Holly, you have a question?
We do. We have several good questions coming in. One is, what about the involvement of congregational opinions into reopening decisions? So are you surveying your congregation? And if so, what criteria will you use to determine from the congregation about reopening? I thought that was a great question.
This will be a good question, Holly, because we have all different types of churches as far as the governance goes. It's going to be great. Great question. Who wants to jump in?
Well, to date, we have not surveyed, our congregation. We have done what we can to reach out and to try and stay, in community with them. We took an opportunity for our staff to call all of our volunteers, which was quite the trek to be able to do that. But again, to date, we have not involved, and I think it will probably stay a decision within the church leadership.
Now, Tammy, just so that we understand, is Transformational Church, is the governance a non-denominational church?
Yes.
Is this an elder-led or staff-led or what?
Elder-led.
Elder-led. Okay, that will help us. All right, who's next?
We did something very similar to Tammy there. We have not surveyed our congregation yet. And kind of jumping ahead, Sutton, one of your questions was the number one concern you face to reopen, and I think that's really where it's at, like what the comfort level of our congregation will be once we decide to start, once the state and our local authorities start to ease some of the requirements and orders. But we've also done the same, just kind of reached out. We set up kind of like a food bank and lots of different toiletries. If people needed help, there was an email to email into, and they could they could swing by the church, and there was a staff member assigned for each day. And so we're continuing that as well. but we haven't surveyed our congregation yet either. I just think we're a little too far out, but it'll probably be something that we look at doing in the next few weeks.
Okay, that's good.
So
Matt?
obviously we're a denomination.
Yep.
So we've got plenty of polity to go around for all of you. We do have committees. So our board, we have a facilities committee, and they have actually partnered with several folks in our congregation, lay folks that are professional in this type of thing. Retired PA, physician's assistant, representative from the mayor's office, that type of thing. So we have not yet surveyed our congregation. However, there's a tool that I think Lifeway put out, and it's just a template. Yeah, it's a template survey. So we're going to be putting that together into a form, an easy form for folks to just give us their feedback and, you know, where they land on if they even want to come back. Because given our current demographic, I mean, DC is like the swamp of overachievers, I guess. You could call it that. And our folks are like, this is really awesome, just hanging out and, you know, sitting in our living room with our kids. And our family ministry pastor tells them all, get as close as you can to the screen, because we still let the kids come up to the front. So it'll be interesting what the feedback that we get. We also have a lot of medical professionals too, so I'm sure they're gonna.
So Lonnie, do you have a high elderly population in your congregation?
You know, I appreciated what Brad was talking about with that master plan. We have our demographic is so spread out. We've got the elderly folks who have retired in or close to DC, and then we had this baby boom, literally 30 babies in the course of 18 months. And they're still coming, which is, I'm sure we're going to have more after this is over. So you've got this really, and then all these young professionals, these staffers, these, you know, folks that work at the Capitol and whatnot. So it's this, you know, cornucopia of age range.
So we've done a couple of informal surveys, and for us we're at about our best guess about 68% that said they're ready to return. Now, once again, it's all through the lens that you're looking through. You know, the Katy community is, if you ask most people, they don't know someone that's been impacted by this. You know, a lot of them have been already at, you know, HEB and Home Depot and Lowe's, and so they're basing their decisions of coming back on, you know, what they may or may not perceive as a threat. And so I think, like every congregation, is you'll have those that'll be there the moment your door is open, and you'll have those that are going to take a more cautious approach, and you'll have those that may do church online forever. But we're going to provide opportunities to meet them where they're at in all three camps. We're going to be very, you know, for us, as our mantra the whole time is, we're going to be safe, we're going to be flexible, we're going to be proactive, and we're going to be missional. You know, and that's going to drive our decision making during all of it. For us too, is our building allows, you know, Katy is a very fast growing area, so we have a lot of church plants within Katy, Texas, and those church plants, you know, that have really no tie to Kingsland, minus just sharing the gospel, is they're not able to meet in schools. So we're going to be able to provide, you know, 6 church plants the opportunity to use our facilities, you know, the 3 different venues on a Sunday and Wednesday night. So it's creating some unique partnerships that probably wouldn't have existed. So it's good to see,
That's awesome.
good to see that being used as well.
Yeah, we haven't done any formal surveys, but a lot of check-ins with people, a lot of opportunities. One of the questions we ask in our table group is, where are you? And so getting a lot of feedback that way of where people are. The other thing that we're paying attention to is other churches in our community and other organizations, and just what their phases are, or what it looks like for them to reopen in their buildings and infrastructures.
That's super helpful. Sutton, we've got more questions, but I know you also have.
No,
some
go ahead and ask another question online. I've got many as well.
Okay, great. So one question that folks are asking, both about staff and volunteers, but thinking about, are you going to confirm, like, have people tested before they can come back to work or volunteer? Are you, you know, how are you thinking about volunteer and staff involvement and interacting with folks as you begin to reopen? I know that's a tough question because we're all at different stages, but how are you just thinking about it as a leadership team?
I'll jump in. Our staff works mostly remotely anyways. So that's kind of been, we haven't really skipped a beat too far with that one. So we'll continue to operate that way. I think when we're ready to reopen our building, that would be a different story in terms of our volunteers. But when we feel like it's safe enough for people to enter, then I don't think we would go through a testing protocol unless that was something that was being asked of us by the local government.
Yeah, we've really just been following local guidelines, just with orders that people stay at home. So a lot of the staff is working remotely. If they do need to come into the office, there's really nobody else around. So we haven't had that as like an issue. The county of San Diego, so a couple of the cities within San Diego have already required facial coverings if you leave your home and you're not with your immediate family and are going to come within 6 feet of a stranger. Starting this Friday, that's required for the entire county of San Diego. And so just depending on how long that goes on and how that kind of matches up, just to kind of answer part of that question, we'll probably continue following just local guidelines. So that may mean for a lot of churches wearing facial coverings while you're, at a worship service worshiping. And that's kind of the approach we're going to take, I think, for now, is just kind of following those local guidelines and being good stewards of what our local government is requiring and asking of us.
That's good. And Sutton, the most common other question that we're getting, which is related, which Brad, I'm sure you have thoughts on this, but as far as logistics of cleaning, are you going to clean between every service? Are you going to clean every day? Like, a lot of people are just wanting to get in kind of the nitty gritty of what do the logistics of safety look like as we begin the phasing of reopening?
Yeah, I think, regardless of size of church, the requirement to clean and disinfect is there. We have, for a couple of years, we've had a contract with a cleaning company that does our building. And so we've scaled down during this time, but they're still here. They still clean all areas where people are every afternoon and evening. And so we've already contacted them, and so we'll scale up. And so for us is we typically did that on Sundays. Now to the degree and the depth that we're going to have to do. But so what that means for us is our worship services will be shorter by about 15 minutes. And so that'll allow them to go through those areas and do that. So yes, absolutely a need. And yes, by us having different venues, we've got crews that are prepared to do that.
One question I have, Tammy, and you might be able to answer this one. As you're planning your staff coming back, have you thought through maybe somebody on your staff having fear of coming back, getting infected, et cetera, and kind of having to deal with that from a leadership level, like, 2 or 3 people maybe not want to, or maybe have a pre-existing condition or something like that? Have you thought through that from just a church staff standpoint?
Certainly. I think one thing that we've learned during this time that we have worked remotely is that it works. We can actually get things accomplished, remotely. And so we want to be supportive of any concerns or fears that our staff may have. If there are, we do have a few that would be considered a part of that endangered population or at a greater risk, I should say, population. And if they felt like they needed to stay at home, absolutely, we would be willing to support that. So we are engaging with our staff daily. Our supervisors or managers, they are having team meetings, via Zoom. It's become our best friend. And engaging, to kind of know where everybody is and how they're feeling. And when it's time to make that decision, if there are some that have concerns, we will do what we can to support that.
That's great. Anybody else have any thoughts on that as far as your church staff goes?
Yeah, we've followed the same type of roadmap that Tammy has, and our team is we're all remote right now. We'll stay. Some of us will probably stay that way just because it's possible, like she said. But I also want to kind of go back to the other question about the facility piece, because so I think there's probably some folks on this call that have pews with cushions like we do. And given that our church is in an urban environment, we've always had hand sanitizers in the facility because we have a lot of unhoused neighbors that participate in worship, which is amazing and fantastic. But we do have pew cushions, and we have hymnals, and we have, you know, all of those things that come with the wonderful traditions of the Methodist Church. So some of those things will be shifting. We're going to have to figure out how because our facility, our big room, our sanctuary is over 120 years old. It has a dome. It was not built to have, you know, the best acoustics or really cool screens. It was built like the Capitol. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get, you know, all of these rich hymns that our choir and our folks love to sing, the lyrics and stuff up somehow. So, but the cleaning piece, we've had to actually pay more attention to the exterior of our building right now since it's been closed. And again, we're an urban area, so we have, you know, we have a great handicap ramp, accessible ramp that a lot of the little toddlers around the neighborhood are using as this really cool thing on their tricycles. And then we have a big plaza out in the front that people can social distance, and occasionally I'll get on the cameras and look, and they're doing like yoga in the middle of our plaza. So we've actually had to do a lot of exterior type of cleaning, more so than inside. But when we get inside, we'll be doing that on a very regular basis.
The question I have is along those lines, Lonnie, and for anybody to answer this, but what are the things that you could see that you continue to do because of the COVID-19, you're going to change some things. For example, maybe before COVID-19, you had handouts when people came in the door, and maybe you're not going to do that anymore. Maybe you used to pass the plate. You're not going to pass the plate. You're going to really kind of get people to go to online. Any of those other things, or any of those two things that you all are like, you know what, because of where we are and that we might have to be fighting this thing for the next 15 months, you know, what are those types of things that you're I mean, we've talked about virtual community groups, but what are some of these things that you learned in the last couple of weeks that now you're thinking about maintaining?
Yeah, so the practical side is we had an online giving platform. We use PCO, Planning Center Online. And what we're hearing from some of our other community churches that we're in partnership with is a lot of them just didn't have the resources to get that set up. So we're trying to help, you know, give them some free resources to still sustain some of their contributions. So that's a practical thing for our giving. We did pass out bulletins that were pretty long, like 12 pages long every Sunday. So that's definitely going to shift. And again, like I mentioned, the hymnals, that sort of thing is going to be a huge adjustment for our folks, because that's just part of the rich tradition and to some extent the liturgy, right? So we've got to figure that piece out. That still keeps them all safe and engaged.
Absolutely. So who else?
Something just to add, as people are thinking, communion has been a question that we've been asked about a couple times, which we were also asked about on Monday's call. So just to add to your question about what might change, how are people thinking about communion as well?
I'll jump in. When this thing first started, you know, kind of impacted us like late March, when we were still allowed to have in-person services, we had talked about as far as giving, instead of passing around offering baskets or plates, just having some boxes in the back secured, obviously, that people could comfortably drop whatever they wanted in. So that was one idea. And then for communion, we had tried to purchase the prepackaged communion elements. So those are two things that we focused on before the shutdown that we'll probably rediscuss, you know, as we start to move forward in planning to reopen over the next couple months, and probably beyond that as well.
That's good, David. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think communion for us, we'd always used the prepackaged, and it's been kind of a self-serve station there. So we will continue that, I'm sure, with any other precautions that need to go along with just having hand sanitizer available, but those are prepackaged. Offering, we are considering that is going to be a bit of a challenge, certainly due to time. We have always passed buckets, you know, in this setup. Gratefully, most of our giving, I'm sure 96% of it probably is online, which is a true blessing, but we do have, you know, in-house. And so we're considering donation boxes as well, just throughout the facility so that people can have access and we don't actually have to pass the buckets.
Mm-hmm. Matt, any thoughts from you on?
Yeah, same thing. We shifting to boxes for offering and then communion, thinking through that differently as well in terms of yeah, prepackaged or actually being able to actually have people give that out with in a sanitized way. And I think even just thinking through like our hospitality here in the future, hospitality station with like coffee and things like that. Starting to think through, I think through all of this, starting to think through what are the high touch areas, right? And how can maybe we need to change some of those practices moving forward. We're looking at like door kick stops for the bathrooms as like a way for people to be able to open the bathroom doors without being able to actually use their hands to open the doors.
Yeah. So what are you thinking about? Are those like hooks on to hold the door open, or are those actually the little wedges that you put underneath the doors?
The wedges to hold open like doors at the front of our church building, but then for bathroom doors specifically, there's those like metal grips that you can just use your foot to open up, and so
right,
using those. Mm-hmm.
It's
a
good.
Great idea.
It's a great idea. See, giving somebody a tip right there that I guarantee you they're going on Amazon right now and ordering a whole bunch of.
The other thing that I think we'll carry with us is like we've heard from a lot of parents that they've been appreciating seeing the kids' curriculum every week, and that was something that they didn't really have a view of before. And so I think being able to offer that in the future will be a real win.
All right, so here's a question for everybody. When you used to meet every week on Sundays from the stage, many times you'd have all your announcements, your most important things, pastor would get up. Now, especially if you do a pre-record, some of those are more tricky, or you put it in the bulletin that you used to hand out. And so now the last month, you haven't handed out any bulletins. So talk to us about what you're doing to communicate with your church members now that may be different than 6 weeks ago.
Mailchimp. I just put everything in Mailchimp right before Sunday service. So 8 o'clock, everybody gets the bulletin in their inbox, and it's at the top of their inbox.
8 o'clock on Sunday morning, you're sending that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's just the order of service. There's nothing else.
Okay.
And
Now,
just to add to that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Let me follow up and ask you
yes.
a question. Are you thinking about possibly doing the hymnals and those types of things that you would normally place in the?
Yeah, we're doing that with that Sunday morning email. We screenshot it and we scan it and it's in there. So they get it and they're sitting there and.
Awesome. Okay, go ahead.
That's great. I was just going to say Mailchimp, for those who don't know, is an email tool. If folks haven't heard of that before, and it's free for depending on your level of contacts, but that's a great idea, Lonnie.
We use Constant Contact, very similar, Holly. It's not free, but it's, again, there's price ranges based on number of people you're trying to reach, but I mean, it's in the thousands. So, and we had already been doing that we do like an e-newsletter. So we've shifted it a little bit to just include some of those things that we would normally announce in live worship services.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. How are you getting new people to sign up for that, to get on your email list? Are you doing that from your website? Are you communicating that on a Sunday service?
Great question. Yeah. I don't manage that myself.
No.
So that's something I could definitely follow up on.
Cool.
But it's already a couple thousand because we run a lot of programs at our church too. So our spread is pretty wide anyway. It's well beyond what we normally run on a Sunday morning. So we're reaching out to those preschool parents. We run an after school program. So we have a pretty big database of people. And we check on click rates a lot as well, just to kind of pivot that and make sure that we're actually producing content that people want to see. And so that's one thing that we've done pretty well, I think.
That's awesome. Anybody else got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're doing a weekly newsletter. We found out pretty quickly who wasn't, some core people that weren't plugged into that. We've recently adapted like a Facebook Live, Instagram Live on Sunday mornings at a certain time, more from like the announcement side, but we've also seen like our lead pastors found like a real connection with people, being able to engage through that platform. So it's almost been a little bit more of an open floor type of opportunity, not only to be able to express what's going on in the life of our church, but hear how people are doing and what questions people have.
So when does your newsletter go out? What day?
That goes out on Wednesday.
Okay. And then when do you do the Facebook Live?
We do that on Sunday mornings,
Okay.
9:30 at Instagram and then at 10 at Facebook.
That's awesome. Anybody else those thoughts on that from a communication standpoint?
For Sutton, the big thing for us is it's always rhythms, right? So we try to echo the rhythms that our people were used to receiving communication for us. For us, it is, we have, you may call it a bulletin or worship guide. We had one. It's very, very simple. Our worship guide was strictly visitor focused. They always say who looks at your worship guide or your bulletin is visitors, and then people looking to see if their announcement got in there, right? And so
That's really good.
That's good.
it's very, and so for us, the most important announcements are going to be announced when we have the largest audience. And so that's going to be a Sunday morning. And so typically we figure out a way from the platform that we say preach our announcements. And so it may be, we got a creative team that we work through that. And then we've got a rhythm from a family ministry perspective, and then from a senior pastor communication perspective. So for us during this process is we have a duality in our executive pastor roles, and Todd Pendergrass is our executive pastor of administration. So any, you would say, sort of pandemic communication updates specifically for the church would come from Todd, and then still church leadership and other communication. We have a weekly video/email that goes out from our senior pastor every Friday. And then we've got a big family ministry thing that goes out Sunday afternoon. So we've been able to keep those rhythms. And then of course, you've got the daily social media rhythms based upon what you may have, and an execution checklist that goes on with each one of those events that goes out. So it's caused us to be more clear on what we want to say. So, for example, age group ministries, we've consolidated. So now parents get sort of one consolidated newsletter. So you're not getting multiple ones. If you have kids and preschool children, students, you're not getting 15 different ones, you get one. So it's helped sharpen our communication a little bit.
That's awesome. Let me ask one final question. And as you all steward your resources, one of them is obviously most of us, the church compensation and salaries is one of the largest as percentage of the church budget. During the season, communication, video, web, all of those things have become super, super important on your abilities. So walk us through from a standpoint of how maybe you've handled that, if it wasn't a big, maybe like you're like David, where you didn't do a whole lot of that before on your service. You didn't do Facebook a whole lot. You didn't have your live video, but now you've had to take your team resources and kind of focus them that way. Walk us through that. Like, what have you learned through this time period, and how have you adjusted?
We've taken the approach to shift responsibilities. So just of certain staff members to keep them engaged. Thankfully, we have a really very what's the word I'm looking for? Just our congregation is so committed, and so we haven't had issues with having to lay people off, which is a blessing, because I know some churches have locally. So we've shifted responsibilities. So people that may have been in charge of maybe outreach events or larger events that we can't have in person, outside of worship, events, we've kind of shifted that responsibility and poured more resources into, platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and the videoing. Our tech team has really stepped up, and they're learning constantly and everything's evolving. And so I think that's kind of how we've just resourced a lot of our staff to keep them connected and engaged, and just try to keep things positive as well amongst the staff.
Yeah, we did the same thing. We reallocated hours from certain roles, and our tech team, our senior pastor, she calls our AV tech lead now a tiny god because he can do all these amazing things. But they've stepped up, and they were part-time actually before, and all of their gigs fell through because there's no events, there's no conferences in DC. So they just jumped at the opportunity to put some of their, experience at work. And they found, like our lead tech guy, he found this program that allows us to have like a news kind of, it's a Zoom feeling, but it's actually a product that you can post to multiple platforms, where you can see everybody, and it's called vMix. And he's like, the best part about this, Lonnie, is that it's 60 days for free. And I was like, oh, yes. So and it's been really a gift to watch how some of them have become real creative, right? So you're given this new form, and all of a sudden these creative concepts and innovation, and how they think we could do something it's almost like a free for all. So yeah, we've shifted a lot of that over.
Sutton, real quick, to go back to your question about reaching new people through our e-newsletter, we do share it on Facebook. And so if people are sharing that, then they would have access. So we would be gaining new people viewing as well. So I guess I just kind of thought about that just to answer your previous question. Yeah.
So if you guys wouldn't mind, I know we got a lot of operations and a lot of executive pastors, administrative pastors. We've got a lot of folks all across the country joining us right now. And I wanted to ask Brad if you wouldn't mind closing this in prayer and just praying for everybody, no matter where they are, no matter the size of the church they are, no matter what they're focused on they're dealing with, and just pray for our whole group that gathered today.
Yeah. So I just want to say thanks again to Vanderbloemen for putting this together. I've followed you guys a couple of these Facebook Live events that you've done, and I think really for probably all of us on this Zoom call and Facebook Live, with every obstacle, there's opportunities. And I think one of the big opportunities for all of us have been able to see how courageously all church leaders are leading. David in San Diego, and Lanny in DC, and Tammy. I mean, it's people that say that the church is declining in America. Nope. Some of our best leaders are doing the most important work.
That's awesome.
God, we thank you. Yeah, we thank you that in the midst of struggles and uncertainty, that you're unchanging. God, we thank you for the way that you continue to demonstrate just your faithfulness and your goodness. So Lord, on our best days and on our worst days, would you remind us of that? God, for each church leader that's on this call, that's watching on Facebook, that's here today, Lord, I pray, number one, is you would meet them where they are, God, and that personally that you would just remind them that they are a son and daughter of the King. That first of all, that their identity rests in you, God, not in the things that they put their hands to. Lord, but I also pray that you would give wisdom. Lord, your word says that if we ask, we will receive. And so give wisdom to these church leaders, that in the context of their communities and with the external and internal restrictions, Lord, that you'd give them wisdom about what you would have them to do for their church. God, would you give them just the ability to do so with boldness in mind? And Lord, would you allow their congregation to respond? And Lord, in the midst of all of this, will you help us just to reap a great harvest for you and your glory? In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you all so very much. Thank you all for joining.
Yes, thank you, everybody. We just want to remind you that we're going to be back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time to talk exclusively about family and next gen and student ministry. We've gotten a lot of questions about that today, as we should. So we've dedicated a whole hour to just that topic tomorrow. So we will see you here at 1 o'clock tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.